Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. Keith, there's a lot going on right now. We're 2 weeks from Club Nationals.
Unbelievable.
Major League Baseball playoffs just started. Go Giants.
Also pretty unbelievable in what's happened there, but not unbelievable that they're happening right now.
NBA preseason is well underway, and the season is coming soon.
John Collins of my Atlanta Hawks made probably what'll be the play of the preseason. Crazy dunk. Look it up on social media.
Honest to God, I haven't seen it. I will go check it out.
Oh my God, just a disgusting alley-oop.
And I am in Rock Hill, South Carolina for the U.S. Disc Golf Championships. We're through 2 rounds, and there's 2 to go. Your leaders right now are last year's champions. Maybe that shouldn't be a surprise, but it sort of feels like a surprise. Paige Pierce and Chris Dickerson out in front right now. So lots going on in the sporting world, and we have a full Nationals field now qualified for San Diego in 2 weeks. Wow.
I'll give you one more thing, Charlie.
Hit me.
Coaching UConn in our first, we have a 1-day tournament on Sunday. So
wow.
We are going to be 5 practices in and going to a tournament we have 27 people going on 2 teams. So it's
that's awesome.
It is great. We'll have 4 of them on any team that has played Ultimate before. So it'll be a lot of, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be some fall chaos, but it'll be fun.
Are you feeling ready for all that, or are you feeling a little out of rhythm?
I think I feel ready. I think I feel ready. Getting back to practices has been very cathartic, and it's it's great to be back in this environment. It's a little weird because you don't have the same connectivity that carries you over from year to year usually, but being back there and going through the same process of explaining how to hold a forehand and watching people play mini, all that stuff is it's good to be home kind of feeling.
I love to hear it. So we're going to break it all down today. The final 3 regional championships. We've got the field. We don't have seeding yet. We don't have a schedule yet. I did my best to make predictions of the seeding. It's up on the website. Check it out. We'll talk a little bit about it today. I don't know how the hell you seed these tournaments. I mean, it's it's a little easier in some divisions than others. The men's division is impossible. It is impossible. The first 3 seeds and the last 5 seeds, pretty straightforward. Everything else, complete jumbled mess. I don't know what you do. There's no good answers. And
USAU should just use your seedings, and that way, if they suck, if it turns out to be bad, they can just pin. They can just
blame me. It's really smart. It's really smart.
USAU, if you're listening, there you go.
I've been very sharp these last few years in my predictions. Very close, often getting them perfectly or off by 1 or 2. I don't know. I'm not super confident this year just because of how challenging some of these decisions are going to be without rankings. Anyway, let's dive right in. Great Lakes, few bids on the line. This is one of the smaller regions in terms of sending teams to nationals. We just get done talking about Northwest and Northeast, or just have 30% of the field or something. But Great Lakes, where should we start? Want to start in mixed?
Sure, let's do it. We temmed and hawed a lot about which of the many potential contenders from this region could be the one to claim the spot. Whether it's all the way from the number 1 seed in Arbor Hybrid down to Petey's Pirates, who got some love on Twitter. Which was pretty funny. But we weren't really talking too much about Petey's Pirates. More focused on the top 5 teams or so. But 5 is a lot. I mean, 5 is pretty deep to go when you're talking about a one bid region. And Ann Arbor Hybrid, despite my picks against them, which they were happy to let me know on Twitter, claimed the 1 bid pretty emphatically, no less.
Yeah, they rolled. I mean, to be honest, 13-7, 13-9, 13-7. On Sunday against the aforementioned Petey's Pirates, U54 Ultimate, a good team, and Columbus Cocktails. They did not have to play Cleveland Crocs, which is, I think, the team that a lot of people expected to be in the hunt. And, ultimately this team only lost one game all season. They lost to Crocs 12-10 back at the Select Flight Invite in July, but they've beaten that team a couple times since and ended up not even having to play them and just rolling. I think I'm curious what you think, Keith, because you did not pick them. But in retrospect, I feel like you're going, wow, I should have picked them because they just have the most talent on the roster of any of the teams in this region.
That is kind of true. I mean, not that they don't have that talent, but from my process standpoint, I don't know that I knew that going into this tournament. I think that I could see how their resume might have been a little flimsy, not really that much stronger than any of these other teams. Not a lot of these teams had seen a lot of top competition. Certainly, if you look at a roster like U54 or Cocktails or Crocs, like you can see the talent, you can see the path there. Crocs ends up taking the double game point loss to Cocktails in semifinals, a Cocktails team that, as in some ways, was kind of written off. But you can see the talent on that team as well. So I don't know necessarily that I look at the roster and I'm like, wow, Hybrid just is miles away from these teams from a talent standpoint. I kind of just felt like it was a tough grind to get through, and that things have kind of gone back and forth with them and Crocs, and I could see Crocs pulling it out at the last second. But Hybrid's a good team, and they left no doubt. I mean, there's no doubt about who was the best team in this region, and I'm very curious to see how they're going to perform at nationals.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be skepticism, and probably fairly so, because they haven't had any serious competition against the big heavy hitters. And, they did have to come out of a tough region, to win a one bid region with 3 or 4 legitimate top 25 teams. That's going to be challenging, period. But it's not exactly a region that has a great reputation for putting, top teams at nationals. So I think there will be skepticism about whether they're going to advance past pre-quarters or maybe even not make pre-quarters.
I always wonder about teams that haven't really gotten tested. I talk about all the time on the show about teams needing to get you need to kind of fall down. You need to get punched in the mouth before it matters. And they don't have a lot of opportunities to do that. Maybe it happens in pool play. Maybe they, drop 2 pool play games and have to win one to make it into the bracket or something. But it's just hard to be in your most important game. Like, let's say they make it to pre-quarters. To be in that most important game and have that be the first time that you're really facing a ton of adversity can be really challenging. A good tease, though, that we have one of the leadership members of that team, and certainly probably one of the most known players on that team, James Highsmith. He'll be joining us in our subscriber bonus segment, where we'll ask him all about regionals, about Hybrid, and about the program and what they think might be in store for nationals.
And the state of Michigan.
A lot of Michigan talk.
Very interesting ultimate state. So yeah, you can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. Check out that bonus segment. Let's turn our attention to the men's division. There's not tons to say here, Keith. Machine is good. They're really good.
That is not a surprise at all. I mean, they did beat Indy Club, who we thought was the top challenger, 13-1 in quarterfinals. They played Indy in quarterfinals. Now, the word on the street is that there was a wedding that took away a lot of the roster for Indy Club, but I'm not thinking they took away 12 points worth of players. So, I don't think anybody was going to question Machine's bona fides at this tournament. So there's not a lot to take away here. I mean, it's almost like concerning that they only beat Cincinnati Omen 13-8. You know what I mean? Like that's how tough it is. But Machine's got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, I mean this team was never really going to have any kind of questions at regionals. It's all about, can they get over the hump, right? They have not beaten Sockeye this season. They have not beaten Sockeye in some time. Can they get to the top of the mountain? And this team, I think this is their shot, right? This is the year that they've got to do it. They had the chance in 2019. They got to the final. Great team. Came close. Now they come back post-pandemic. Here they are again. If you don't win it this year, do you start to lose some players, right? Because they've got some travel players. They've got some people who might be moving away. They're like, hey, let's run it back one time. Maybe they're thinking program long-term. I don't always get that sense from this team, though, to be honest. They've got some people who maybe are on the borderline of wanting to retire. Can they pull it off this year? They certainly have the tools. They're good enough to win. And, regionals tells us nothing about that, though, I don't think.
No, and I look forward to talking more about them during our future nationals preview, because they've had a history of playing with some really thin margins that really could have turned how we look at this machine program over the past few seasons. But certainly they're in a position to be the top contender to challenge Sockeye.
No big surprise in the women's division either, with both Nemesis and Rival qualifying very easily for nationals. Of course, all eyes on that final, though. Nemesis playing Rival, and the 2 seed Nemesis getting the win 13-9. I don't really think that's surprising, but I'm really curious about this Nemesis team. Are they going to be better than we thought as we get in towards nationals? Like, I definitely don't think this is a semis team, but could they be a quarters team?
I think we've had them around that area all season. I mean, I think they were something like number 10. And I feel like they've been around that area in that like 8 to 15 range in the power rankings all year. So I think that they have been a quarters contender. I think that there's plenty of experience on this team. So I don't think they're going to be an easy out by any means. I don't think they're going to be intimidated by anybody at nationals. They don't have maybe any of those players you think of as like takeover players per se. Although I've been really impressed by some of the ability for that from some of these players you don't know as well. We saw Sarah Nolik play extremely well during the Premier Ultimate League. We've seen Jenny Corcoran with her throws. Sometimes she can just kind of take over a game. Jacqueline Jarek has been playing well. Sarah Lipscomb, someone who makes a lot of plays. So I think that there's some depth to this team, and it may end up coming a lot down to matchups for them, but they're a team that I think is good enough to make quarterfinals and good enough to challenge somebody in that spot. But it's tough to really gauge what their ceiling is beyond that. As it's been for so long in the club women's division, it often feels like there's a big wall between the title contenders and everybody else.
And I feel like this year, it's even more than that. There's like the title contenders, which are like Brood and Fury and Molly. And then you've got like some other really good teams, couple like Phoenix and Traffic. And then there's like a massive drop off. It feels stark to me. Like when I look at the, just even results, it's like a team like Nemesis, is losing by 5 or 6 goals to a Brute Squad type team. And they're like the 10th ranked. And I mean, it just shows you what the stratification that there is. But again, this is all stuff for another day.
Nemesis they got 2 wins over Rival, which I think is a really good sign for them.
They
beat them both times at this tournament. And those 2 teams, just to give you a sense of, you want to talk about stratification, look at this tournament. Nemesis, in their other 4 games, gave up a combined 2 goals. And Rival gave up a combined 8 goals, I think, in their other 4 games. So it's like, and this was 2 heavyweights getting ready to fight each other.
Yeah. Let's stay in the women's division as we move over into the Southeast region, playing in North Carolina for the regional championships. And, the first bid was a lock. I think it was all very clear coming in that Phoenix out of Raleigh was going to get that first bid. They did that. They beat Tabby Rosa 13-8 in the final. And then, of course, the big question was Tabby versus Ozone. And, this is not the Ozone of years past, a perennial nationals team, a team that upset Riot a few years ago to get into the semifinals, earn a bid to Worlds. This is kind of a thrown together last minute Ozone team with a lot of new names on the roster. But there were enough veterans that you thought, okay, maybe they've got a shot. And I think it's fair to say they had a shot. They got to the game to go. They played Tabby Rosa, but there they lost 10-7, breaking one of the longest national streaks. If you count Ozone's year of not calling themselves Ozone, which is a little questionable to me, but we're going to give him that. It breaks the longest national streak over 30 years in the club division of not making it. So Tabby Rosa, who has really looked pretty solid all season long, gets to nationals with that 10-7 win.
Yeah, they'll head to their second nationals in program history, which I'm sure they're really excited about. And they were a team that we highlighted a little bit because they have some vets who've kind of returned to this team that have been to nationals, have played on other nationals level programs. And I actually think they're one of the big winners from this tournament, not just in qualifying for nationals, but in being pretty competitive, I think, with Phoenix. If Phoenix is a team we're thinking about going to semifinals, 13-8 losses are pretty respectable. I mean, Phoenix beat Ozone 13-1. So that's a pretty big gap right there. And we didn't know what to expect from Ozone. This is, like you mentioned, a very different roster. There's like a handful of players who've played with Ozone in years prior. I can't imagine that they've had a lot of reps together. So, I think this was a bit of a lark in some ways. There was enough talent, but just it's hard to make it all coalesce in just
I shouldn't have picked them. It was a huge mistake.
Hey, fall back on the programs is a tried and true picking strategy that you've used to much success over the years.
I mean, that's true, but this was just not quite the same situation. And Tabirosa was good during the season. They were not just like a team that was going to de facto qualify because there were two bids in this strange, COVID altered season. They were legitimately a nationals quality team. So anyway, congrats to them for making it through. Curious to see what Phoenix is going to bring at nationals. I know they're starting to get a little bit healthier. That's big for them. And let's turn our attention over to the men's division. Two bids in the men's division as well. Two heavy favorites, Ring and Chain. And at the end of the day, those were the teams that qualified for nationals. Ring of Fire getting a 13-11 win over Chain Lightning in the final. And in the second place game, Chain Lightning beating Tenacity 13-6. And so ultimately that game, not all of that close. But, Chain putting up a 13-11 game on Ring, I think that bodes very well for what they could be in a couple weeks.
Are you sure? Are you sure that you don't want to look at this the other way? I mean, I know we've been very high on Ring, but this is basically their debut, right? This is essentially the first really high level game they've played. I think that we could see Ring pull away. Like if these two teams were to play again at nationals, I could see Ring winning this game a lot more comfortably. It's not surprising to me to see them play this game close. And in fact, I could imagine them having lost this game and taken second in the region. I mean, I think with the talent is off the charts with this Ring team, but we talked how much they were a little bit different, just different enough from Flyers to have to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit. But you know what? To their credit, Chain played some great games during the regular season, so they shouldn't be written off. I just don't know what to make of it. There's just not enough data points about Ring to really like set them up as the measuring stick.
I mean, that's totally fair. I just think that the roster and the continuity and the additions that they get makes them feel like a really good team. I mean, I think we have to assume, like, even an unpracticed, not super high chemistry version of Ring, which they're still going to have chemistry because many of them have played together for years or played the entire AUDL season together. Even that team is like lock quarters, right? I mean, there's just too much talent on the team. Like, I legitimately think Ring is a national championship contender.
I mean, I agree with you there. I'm curious though. It'd be an interesting thought experiment. Like, if you took this Ring roster and they had never played a single game together and just showed up at nationals, how would they place? I think that would be an interesting thought experiment. But I'm with you. I think that Ring's future is very bright. I will be picking them to do very well. I just am not quite sure how to use this game to evaluate Chain. But Chain has a longer resume to work with. So I think that they're a good team. And this is a good result for them anyway.
Here's a crazy thing. If I just ask you straight up, where is Chain going to get seated? What do you think?
I don't know. 8th or 9th? You know,
Seems
usually
like a
they're a team
reasonable
that's like
take.
in the 12th, 13th, and then they had a good year this year. So like 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that.
It seems like a reasonable take. In my predicted seedings, Keith, I have them as the 4 seed.
Wow.
Let me explain, okay? Because this is crazy, and we'll talk a little bit more about the seeding stuff in a bit. They beat Truck. They beat Rhino. They lost close to Ring. They lost to Machine. They split games with Sub-Zero, but got the more recent win. So right now, when you look at these teams, I don't know how you see, like, Truck is my 6 seed. Sub-Zero is my 5 seed. And it seems crazy, but like Sub beat Chain, beat Truck, beat Pony, only lost to Sockeye and Chain at their one tournament. And so if you beat Truck and you beat Rhino, like, you're going to be a top 7 seed. And so I have Chain at 4. And if you can find a better team to put at the 4 seed, please let me know.
Yeah, I want to talk more about this. I definitely do.
Okay, we'll get to it. Let's go to the women's division.
The
mixed division. And this was another one where it was kind of like some intrigue, you know. How good is Toro? You know, they're clearly the favorite. Are they going to just roll through and get the win? No, sir. They are certainly not. Shine out of Nashville gets the dub. They win 9-8 in the final to claim the lone bid to Nationals. And so the 1 and 2 seeds getting through the bracket. Toro mostly smooth sailing until they met up with Shine, and they lose 9-8, and that's it. You know, one of Toro's best seasons that I can remember during the regular season goes up in smoke at regionals.
I gotta say, Charlie, I'm pretty disappointed. I mean, I got razzed on Twitter by teams that I picked against, and that's totally fair game. I love it. Bring it on, and congratulations to those that I doubted that proved me wrong. But man, I feel like I really hitched my wagon to Toro this year, and gotta say I'm disappointed with the outcome there. It's not the biggest egg laid at regionals that we're going to talk about on the show today, but it's probably the toughest one for me to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm having trouble understanding or getting a feel for is, like, does this tell us more about Shine, or was this Toro playing poorly? Because Toro absolutely dominated regionals to this point. They dominated the series to this point. I mean, they crushed everybody. They won 15-6 in the sectional final. They hadn't allowed more than 7 goals against them at regionals. And then, boom, they lose to Shine. A team that they beat 15-8 at the AMP Invite just a couple months ago. Not even a couple months ago, like 1 month ago. 15-8, Keith. And then they lose 9-8. So what do you take away from this? Is this a Toro choke job, or is Shine coming together at the right time, and this is actually like a kind of a sneaky, dangerous roster?
Sadly, the truth is probably in the middle, but I gotta lean Toro choke job, and here's my logic for why. A, you got a low score here. Shine wins 9-8. Sounds ugly to me. Sounds like an ugly game, right? Doesn't sound like beautiful ultimate. Now there are definitely some low scores in this tournament, but this one stands out. It's the lowest I think that you can find in the bracket. So that's concerning to me. I guess there's one other 9-8 game in the morning. They also played pretty close, Shine, in their semifinal against MK. They won that one 11-9. It's their other close result of the weekend, really. So I gotta say this smells like Toro playing poorly, probably as Shine was playing well, and like that's the cocktail for a big upset like this.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. I don't think we've seen enough from Shine to think that this is going to be like a dangerous team at Nationals. I think Toro just had a bad game at the wrong time.
Maybe Shine will have that super lame magic from 2019, but maybe I drank the Kool-Aid on Toro from their first tournament when they had some ringers.
That is the thing about Toro. They did have a lot of ringers this season.
The rest of this roster still looks good. Like I feel like players like Grayson Sander and Tanner Barkis, Heather Zimmerman. Like, these are good nationals level players, like, who I think could have been in a great position to do well in nationals. So, yeah, it's tough to swallow.
So let's move over to the Southwest Division, and there was some spice. There was some real spice in the Southwest. Keith, what division should we start in?
Let's start in the men's division because it happens to be the one that I'm looking at right now.
Well, take us through it.
So, this is we talked about this. There's just a rule. You can't have too many bids in the Southwest. But this one felt like maybe it was almost appropriate. You got Revolver, you got Condors. They're your top 2 seeds, and we've heard this story before. Revolver goes on, Condors gives them a tough game. Revolver wins. They win the final. Condors goes in the back door, beats down on somebody. Right? Like that's the age old story.
Tried and true.
Not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso says. We wrote a different story this time around. Condors goes up on Revolver. They win 13-9 in the first place final. They finally take that. They slay the dragon. Revolver's got to go in the backdoor bracket. They thump the other team. Revolver's going to nationals, but SoCal Condors, your Southwest men's division regional champion.
Amazing. I don't really know what to make of this. I mean, this feels historic in some ways. When we come into the year, it's like Revolver is looking like a rebuild a little bit. They're got a lot of young kids on the team. There a lot of the stalwart players that have driven Revolver to the big highs and championships are gone from the roster. And there's a bunch of folks from the Cal Poly Slow teams. And you still got Elijah Kearns out there. You still got Tom Doy, Sawyer Thompson. Like there's veterans, but there's also a lot of young players. And then what do? Well, they go to pro championships and they look like one of the best teams at the tournament. And they beat Truck Stop and they beat Sockeye and they beat Bravo. They only lose one game and it's on Universe to Rhino. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess Revolver's still being Revolver. And then they kind of get punched in the mouth by Condors at regionals. It's not like this was like a 1-point loss. They lost 13-9. That's not very close. That's easily their biggest loss of the season. And so I don't really know what to make of that. This rattles me a little bit. Let me tell you why. It makes me feel like the regular season is really like super fool's gold. Like that we shouldn't trust much of it. Because if this Revolver team that goes out to pro championships and like looks like one of the best teams then gets thumped by 4 at regionals, I obviously the primary thing you should probably think is, okay, they just had a bad game. They had played a bunch of bad teams. They weren't ready for that level, and they kind of come out flat and they lose. Yeah, sure. But it does make me a little kind of itchy to think like, okay, well, I have to rewrite the whole script in my head. I mean, and this blows up seeding also. Like, what do you do with Revolver? This is a team that was going to be a 4 or 5 seed, and then now they have this loss at regionals that you have to take account of because it's regionals and everyone's at their actual legitimate true peak selves. And I don't know what you do. But, I mean, congrats to Condors for sure. Huge win. I think this is a really positive sign for Condors for obvious reasons, but it also makes me super worried about like how we evaluate teams this year.
We all would love for some sort of, rock in the ocean, a lighthouse to help give us something to better evaluate these teams, to have a clearer picture of who they are during the nationals, the type of thing that we get in most seasons. Like, we're looking for that familiarity. And you're totally right. I had the same reaction. Oh man, does this tell us that the regular season might not mean that much? It's a weird compressed calendar too. Usually there's a month between regionals and nationals, and teams have time to really make a lot of changes, but we might not see that many changes. You probably had a lot of players who are playing their first or second tournament together at regionals. I don't know. It's very dangerous for us to come with too many assumptions into nationals. And I think a result like this shows that. But also, I think it shows the volatility of a team like Revolver. I don't think it's that weird for a team that's talented but unfamiliar with one another to have results that are really ranging the spectrum. So,
and young.
You're right. A young team. Like this is, if I'm going to say that it's good for teams to get punched in the mouth before the critical time, like you don't want it to be when your season's on the line. Revolver got that now. That's good for a young team that's forming. Maybe that could really pay off for them in a way that, they play a team like Ring in semis or, a team that's untested. Maybe that could pay off,
I think you certainly learn from a game like that. I mean, I think it's coaches will tell you, and Keith, you're a coach, you tell me, you learn a lot more from a loss than you do from a win because you're much more likely to evaluate how to get better from a loss than from a win. When it's just like, oh, great, we won. We're the better team. Everything's awesome. When you lose, you watch a tape. You get upset. You take it more seriously. You think about how to make adjustments. And certainly Revolver's going to do that. And, on the other side, I think this is a result for Condors that, is a feather in the cap of this program. It's something they've been fighting for years. And I don't think this suddenly upgrades them to, semis team, but it makes me think a little more highly of them. It makes me think they're going to be a legitimate threat in the quarterfinals.
And that's something that I feel like they've always lacked. They haven't felt like that legitimate threat. They felt like a good team that really just didn't have it in them to win the big game. So seeing them go out there and win the big game, I think does have some value. And I definitely don't think they're going to put an asterisk next to it. I think they went out there and they won that game pretty cleanly. So I don't know what we'll do with them come nationals. I mean, it's going to depend a little bit on the pools, but it's going to be hard not to fall back on our priors. This is a good win though. And we don't want to take away any credit for them, but it feels like the story is really Revolver's loss.
I mean, this has just been the team, It's one thing for them to have lost in the national finals of Pony in 2018. The team that defined a generation of players. Now they lose at regionals. That's unheard of. And it shows you from how high they were to where they have descended. Let's be honest. And it's not like they're missing nationals. I mean, that would be like the true shocker. But this is a team that's going to take some time to get back up to those highs. And maybe it will happen in a couple weeks at nationals. But I think, I think we're going to see some lumps, some inconsistency. And, well, we'll just have to find out once we get to San Diego. Let's go to the women's division. Fury dominating. I don't really want to give a lot of time to this team. They are the best team in the country right now. They're the number one seed at nationals for sure. They are, I think potentially going to dominate the competition all the way through to the final. But they certainly made quick work of everybody at regionals. They win the final 15-5 over Nightlock. Incredibly impressive team.
We've spent some airtime singing the praises of Sockeye as a really dominant team in the men's division, and they may have been one-upped by this Fury team. I mean, of all the teams that are leading the pack, it may be Fury who's the farthest ahead of the competition. There are other good teams. We've seen Molly Brown, Brute Squad. There's going to be a lot of talk about them, but Fury looks really something else, and this is a very impressive performance at regionals. It's going to be hard to pick against them.
Although Nightlock looked like the second best team for most of the weekend, they end up falling in the second place finals, 13-10 to Wildfire, who came into the tournament as the 2 seed. Wildfire then goes on to beat LOL 13-9 to get the last spot, winning that game to go. So the 3 teams that were expected to qualify did. Although I do think there was some, I think Wildfire taking second, Keith, is actually kind of a big surprise and speaks highly of, where this Wildfire team could go.
They were a team that I think people were down on. They had a lot of roster turnover. They have some new names that we're not familiar with or have played elsewhere. But I think there was some concern that they might not be able to beat LOL for the third spot. So to see them come out here and perform well at regionals is a great sign for them. I'm sure they're really excited and should be as they get ready for nationals. Both preparing the new players who this will be their first nationals experience, but also giving confidence to the players that are in big roles for them. Folks like Dina Slattery, who's a name that we're very familiar with, but not necessarily in a Wildfire jersey. And it's on the flip side, just like we talked about with Revolver and Condors. I mean, it's got to be concerning for Nightlock.
Yeah, it's a strange loss in some ways. I mean, because really, Nightlock had looked quite good through much of the tournament, and they had this strange format. But they'd beaten Wildfire and LOL 13-6 and 13-7 earlier in the tournament. 13-6 they beat Wildfire, and then they lost to them 13-10. I don't really know how to describe that. I don't really know what happened there. But I do think Nightlock's still probably the second best team, and I would expect them to be a challenging team to deal with at nationals. I mean, I think this could be a quarters team. We have so little crossover this year in the women's division because so many teams either didn't really play very much, and when they did play, they played locally. So it's like, okay, we have these like little bubbles of regionals teams with a little bit of crossover. Pro Championships gives us a little glimpse into things, but we don't exactly know where Nightlock is relative to, say, Nemesis. And so we'll see. I mean, credit to Wildfire for getting the win, but I still feel like Nightlock, given the totality of what they did on the weekend, is probably the second best team in this region.
All right, Nightlock might be on Charlie's picks for the game when they come. Although this year it's going to be, I mean, we're really going to be guessing with the game. I mean, you're just going to have to get lucky, I think. Get the right numbers on the bingo card, so to speak.
I forgot about the game until you just brought it up, and now I'm hyped.
Me too. You want to talk about bringing it back, coming back to normalcy. We need the game back.
All right, and let's go to the mixed division. And,
nothing to see here, nothing really interesting.
No, standard stuff. Bay Area teams rolling through. Psych. Lawless out of Arizona, dominating their way to a title. They beat Polar Bears 15-9 in the final. And, in some ways, like, they got a very soft schedule. They beat those three teams, and then it was up against Polar Bears, and boom. They win, and, but the thing is, like, they dominated all of their contests. Like, that it just broke their way, and they beat a very good Polar Bears team pretty soundly. So, huge win for Lawless, the first Arizona team to qualify for nationals since 2008. And, I mean, really, they had looked like the best team. Like, if you actually look at the way the teams played during the season, and you were just going to say, which of these teams do you think is probably going to win this region? And you didn't think about the history, you didn't think about what you knew about teams from 2019 or whatever. You just looked at on paper this year. You would say Lawless was the favorite, and they went on and they did their thing and they won. And Polar Bears takes the second seed, and Keith, Mischief, 2019 national finalist, does not qualify for nationals. And not only that, they finished 6th. What? What happened to this team, Keith?
Inexplicable. I mean, there's like 3 players on here that were in our club top 25 players in 2019. 2 of them were probably in there might be 4 players on here actually on this roster. That this is not a situation like Ozone. This isn't. We've got 6 returners and a bunch of new people. This is mostly the Mischief. This is that team, and just. I mean, maybe it's a little on the nose to say they laid an egg, given their branding, but. Whew, that is, it's inexplicable. I've asked people about it. Nobody has a great explanation for what happened.
The things that I would come up with don't really stand up to scrutiny. Like, well, people in the Bay Area were kind of more reluctant to get back to playing Frisbee and didn't want to like go to big travel tournaments and stuff. I mean, that's true. But that same thing is true about Fury. That same thing is true about Revolver. That same thing is true about some of the Seattle teams. And yet they all did great. And Mischief doesn't even qualify. Didn't even come close. I don't know what to say. Sometimes teams just don't get it together. But it's bizarre to see a team with this much talent not make nationals.
Very, very, very strange.
But what I will say, Keith, their regular season resume sucked.
Yes, it did. I mean, I don't know what was going on all year, really.
Right. But I think it was like, everyone was like, they're going to get it together. I mean, come on, it's Mischief. They made the finals in 2019. Look at this roster.
So it's like the opposite of the Revolver takeaway,
whatever,
right? Like
they lost some games, whatever. No, not whatever. They're actually just not that good, and they lost.
I mean, does the regular season mean stuff or not? I don't know. What are you trying to tell us, Revolver? What are you trying to tell us, Mischief? Like, I don't know. I will say this though, not on the topic of Mischief, but going back to Lawless. I mean, they look legit. I'm buying. I mean, I'm super skeptical about teams that haven't been there before, but I would have said the same thing about regionals. I in fact did. That's why I didn't pick them. They did not sweat it at regionals. So I think Polar Bears are going to prove to be a good team, and at Lawless beating them 59 is going to look like a really good win. They could be a real shocker at nationals, I think.
I mean, when you look at the Pro Champs results, they lost a bunch of games, but they lost a bunch of games really close to really good teams. And that's not the same as winning those games, obviously, but it does give you a sense of where they are, like what their ceiling might be. And I don't think teams are going to want to play them come pool play. It's like a lot of explosive players, and we're going to hear more about some of those players and this team in an interview with Lindsey Doyle, one of the captains of this Arizona Lawless team, and it's coming up right after this. Joining us now on Deep Look is Lindsey Doyle, who's a captain of Arizona's Lawless, who just became the first team in quite some time to win the Southwest Regional Championship in the mixed division that's not from the Bay Area. Lindsey, congratulations and welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So this Lawless team has been kind of a exciting, buzzy team since the start of the year when we first saw a roster, and it was like, wow, this team that kind of didn't have a lot of fanfare coming into the season, but as soon as you played your first tournament, it's like, wow, this is like a lot of the best players in Arizona together on a roster. How did this team come to be?
Sure. So I've been in Arizona now for over a decade, and the conversation has often been, historically there's 2, 3, sometimes 4 teams, and our talent is spread out. What could Arizona do if we could streamline that and really put some of this talent together on one team? We, right before the pandemic hit, there was a group of us that said, I think now is the time. And we kind of burned everything to the ground and started fresh. And then the pandemic hit. So fast forward 2 years, a lot of committee meetings later, a couple big tryouts, and you have a tiered system, 3 teams. And it's neat because the teams really support each other and try and make sure that we're having multi-team practices and scrimmages, getting each other ready for tournaments. And you'll find us on each other's sideline at tournaments, cheering each other on, which is really neat. But we consolidated the top talent onto a couple of teams, and it's been really fun to watch.
We've talked to quite a few people on the program about their experiences, coming back from the pandemic with their existing programs. And here you are, not just starting a new program, but a larger ultimate community idea. What challenges did you face? Did you have doubts that after all this time that you could pull it off?
No, we knew for sure it would work. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we definitely had some doubts. We had concerns. The pandemic was a perfect time for a lot of our veteran players to say, you know what, this might be it for me and retire. So especially our women matching players, we were really low on those numbers for all three teams. And so I know all three teams could have used a few more in that side of the personnel. But the core group that was pushing for this is a really strong group of leaders, really dedicated to growing the Arizona Ultimate community. And so, between working with the local colleges, the rec leagues, club, and with Arizona Sidewinders coming up now and working with the pro system, trying to really recruit and create that pathway for those people who are just getting into Ultimate to have a place to grow. There were definitely some moments that we were unsure it was going to happen. We, as a first year program, there were rocky parts, there were speed bumps, there's lessons we learned. But we're excited to double down for next year and keep pushing to grow Arizona Ultimate.
So let's talk about some of those speed bumps. I don't know whether you look at this tournament as a speed bump or as a success, because I think you could really look at it in both directions. You were very successful in your first couple tournaments of the year, and then you go to the Pro Championships in Boulder, and you go 2-5. Now, obviously, the quality of the competition at that event was very high, and you played a lot of very close games against very good teams. 12-10 loss to Mixtape, 12-11 loss to BFG, 14-12 loss to Shame, and a couple of wins over Love Tractor and Public Enemy. So what did you take away from that tournament? And did you feel like, okay, we're ready to go and, qualify for nationals, or did that open up doubts because you were losing more games than you were winning?
I think it was a positive experience overall. Our beginning of the season, we had some pretty easy games. I think we got a little confident. Pro Champs was our first look at really high caliber teams. And I think we learned a lot through those experiences. One of our players said he was really happy we got a gut check moment, and it really exposed our weaknesses and where we needed to focus, coming out of Pro Champs and moving in towards the series.
When you formed this team, like the Lawless team at the top of the Arizona pyramid, was making nationals this year a goal, or was that a side effect of the other things you're putting in place and implementing for this program?
It depends who you ask. When we first started the conversation about combining the Arizona talent, if you look at the individuals, we've got some pretty great names on our team. And I think there was a large contingent of us that said, yeah, nationals is absolutely within the realm of possibility. There were other people that were like, whoa, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's a first year team. There's a lot of chemistry that needs time to build. And I think we saw that throughout the season. We had some ups and downs. I think sectionals was our first real test of mental toughness and team chemistry. And it didn't go as we had hoped it would. And I think between that tournament and Pro Champs, we kind of had those moments of, okay, this is where our game needs work. This is where our team chemistry needs work. And it came together really nicely going into regionals. And, we felt very confident and calm going into regionals. We were confident in the work we'd put in and the work that we'd done on and off the field. So, I think there was definitely some people that doubted it. And there were some of us that, myself included, that thought, yeah, nationals is within the realm of possibility for sure.
So this is the first time that an Arizona team is going to go to nationals since 2008. What does that mean for the community in Arizona? And obviously Arizona is a big place. I grew up in New Mexico, and, similarly, like, it's a large state, but it does feel, at least to me, like some of those states that don't have the huge hub ultimate communities like a Denver or like a San Francisco or whatnot, kind of do have more of a community vibe where, like, you kind of know the people who play in in the South Central, if you will, in Arizona or New Mexico. So what does it mean for Arizona to be sending a team again after, over 15 years?
I think there's a couple of things. I think a lot of people have felt like we could do it. I think it's kind of unifying. Like I said before, we had a couple of teams every year, 2, 3, sometimes 4. And this feels like it's really unifying the community. The other teams in the system, when we scored that last point at regionals, we turned around and we had our team from Flagstaff and we had our second tier team Calamity on the sideline. They made a tunnel, they sprayed champagne. I mean, they were right there. And so it's felt really unifying. There are people that play in our rec leagues that I've known now for 10, 12, 13 years who, when Arizona Sidewinders popped up, they were like, I want to be a part of it, whether it's support or investing or whatever. There were people who came out of the woodwork when we started talking about the system to have big tryouts. We're like, hey, we could use volunteers. And I immediately was getting emails after emails with, hey, I've got a shade tent. I can be there. I can't be there, but I'd like to contribute. How can I help? So to see everyone's contributions kind of come to fruition here and have a team, have a system be this successful, it feels really like a community endeavor. Like everybody had a little part in it. And so, as we go, we want to we want to play well for ourselves, but we want to make our community proud too. And so we're really hoping we can do that at Nationals.
For those,
well, I want.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Keith.
For those unfamiliar with the team, I'm curious if there's anybody you feel like people should get to know, individual players who you're really excited for people to get to see. I know we had an article come out right at the end of 2019 highlighting players for smaller communities, and one of those is on your roster, Laura Prelsnick. But is there anybody else who you feel like you're excited for the world to get to know at Nationals?
Yeah. So on Lawless, we have 8 members who have been to a club nationals before, and we have 18 who have not. So there's a lot of new faces. Some of our newer players have a raw athleticism that's amazing. Meredith Bile and Caden Sigerud are 2 of our newer players, but they are playmakers. You'll see him pull out some pretty cool plays at nationals. I mean, there's everybody contributes in a really cool way, but they're really fun to watch. I know Cynthia Thomas has been mentioned in your articles before. Jamie Erickson, who now has moved up to Seattle and has been flying back for practices and flying to tournaments and things like that. There's a huge contingent of sidewinders and other pro men and women on the team. So I mean, I could list everybody. Everybody's got something that they do that makes them amazing, and I think it's one of the ways that we are so successful is that everybody does something, and we have found a role on the team for each and every player. So it's going to be fun, and I could just hand you the roster and say, here you go, get to know all 26 of us, because it's going to be fun.
All right, so you lose your last 2 games at sectionals to Lotus 12-9 and California Burrito 14-10. And then you come out and you don't just win Southwest Regionals, a really challenging, deep region, but you kind of dominate. I mean, you beat Mischief 13-9. You beat Polar Bears in the final 15-9. You beat California Burrito, who'd beaten you at sectionals 15-4. So the first thing that comes to my mind is there must have been roster changes. There must have been more players who showed up at regionals. But I also just want to hear from you, what changed between sectionals and regionals that allowed you to be so successful and qualify for the tournament?
Sure. Sectionals, yes, didn't go nearly the way we'd liked. We did have some folks that couldn't be at sectionals or couldn't be there the whole weekend. We also had a pretty catastrophic injury to one of our players. She actually broke her leg in 3 places. And day 2, we came out really flat. And like I said, this was the first test of our mental toughness. And we were not as positive and uplifting towards each other as I think we probably needed to be. And it was one of the things that we took from sectionals was that this team plays well when we are having fun and when we are supporting each other. And I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody who's played sports. When people are having fun and playing confidently, they play better. So sectionals, yeah, it was interesting, and we definitely learned how to treat each other better, and we worked on that between sectionals and regionals. We made the focus of all the conversations was positivity and, constructive feedback. And we have a whole, Slack thing going over film and critiquing ourselves in a really safe space. And I think it showed. I mean, even at our practices between sectionals and regionals, people were playing better and things were clicking and people were having fun, and it kind of rolled the momentum forward right into regionals for us. And yeah, I mean, Mischief is a great team. Their ladies were really athletic and challenging. Polar Bears, I would never count them out. They're very good. We just happened to have a tournament that we put everything together at the right moment. So I think we learned from sectionals, we used it in regionals, and I'm not going to lie, it was really fun and it felt really good to do that well at regionals.
What's the ceiling of this team? I mean, you played some teams that I think are going to be top 3-4 seeds at nationals, back at Pro Champs, and you only lost by 1 or 2 in a couple of those games.
Yeah.
Can you make a real push in the bracket, do you think?
I think we can. We've seen, like you said, we've seen some of these teams before, BFG, Mixtape, Shame. I think we gave them all pretty good games. I know we're looking forward to seeing them again because the Lawless that they saw isn't the Lawless they're going to see. The Lawless that they saw earlier in the season, still figuring it out, right? Putting all of these people who haven't played together into their roles, and it's all come together and it's clicking and we fine-tuned. And so we're really excited to see them again. I think we could make a push. I mean, there's a lot of good teams, so I would never be so cocky as to say, where exactly I think we're going to land. But I think we'll give them a good showing.
Speaking of Pro Champs, I had a chance to see the Spirit scores that came out from the tournament, and Lawless had an aberrational ranking that was surprisingly low. What do you think might have caused teams to view the team that way? And what did that inspire in the team after hearing about that?
We were a little hurt, actually. That might sound kind of funny, but there was a really simple and very unfortunate misunderstanding on the sideline. There was a way off base assumption made about something that was said. They didn't hear the full thing. It was taken out of context, however you want to put it. But we were actually kind of hurt at the things said about us, and we know they were said to other teams. But it's something that happened, and how it happened, it is what it is. As a team, we try not to look back. We try and look forward. We're confident that the teams we've played since and the teams that we're going to play in San Diego will see us for the team that we are. We are a spirited team. We want everyone to have fun playing a game at the highest levels. We want to play with our other ultimate loving friends and have a good time playing the game. It was an unfortunate situation that I think went from just a misunderstanding, a mistake that could have been talked about, but wasn't. And we've heard things since, and we have learned why things ended up going the way they went. But like I said, we focus on moving forward. In any sport, you're going to have a couple of those athletes whose enthusiasm gets the better of them from time to time. I'm sure every player has had a moment where they've had to take a breath before they continue talking about a call or something like that. But we do take pride in our Spirit scores, and we've committed to making respect and sportsmanship a priority. So we hope there isn't any question about our integrity and our spirit moving forward. And I think if teams can look at us as an individual team and judge us on what they see, then I think they'll see that about us for sure.
I got an email. I'm not sure whether I should say who it's from or not. I don't know if it matters.
Uh-oh.
But I got an email from somebody from Arizona. No, it's from somebody from on your team. Okay. And it was about Harrison Schwartzer, your coach, and the fact that Schwartzer started his coaching career in 2019 with Public Enemy, who had, of course, was kind of a surprise qualifier that year. and now, comes out here and coaches another different team to a surprise. I don't know if I want to call it a surprise, but still maybe seen as an underdog team qualifying for nationals. And this is just the email is kind of glowing about Schwartzer's contributions, what he's been able to do as as a scout of the other teams, and just preparing the team for regionals in the series, and now getting ready for nationals. So I was just I don't know Harrison. I don't believe maybe we've emailed at some point, but I would just love to hear what his contribution has been and how that's contributed to your team.
Sure. Well, Harrison did want me to say hi because he said, I like Charlie. Charlie's a cool guy. So tell those guys I said hi. Harrison. So he coached Public Enemy, and he's a coach of Arizona Sidewinders, which I'm a part of. And so I was one of the people recruiting him to come out here. His girlfriend lives in Flagstaff, and so we're like, come on out and, help us out. Come be our coach. Harrison has an amazing ability to evaluate the other teams and like you said, get us ready and prepared. He's tough. He's very, very tough. I think he has a reputation for being pretty intense. But he does push us, and he doesn't take any excuses, which has been great. And we also have assistant coach Mark Borger, and the two of them together have been a really great duo for us. Mark has been in the area for a long time. We played together on Rubik's, and his contributions have been phenomenal. I think the two of them have made us the team that we are. And I think Harrison's really excited to see what we do at nationals.
Now, that was a really positive communication from the team to us. We also got an LOL on Twitter in response to last week's episode where where both Charlie and I picked against Lawless. Do you need us to pick against you again for nationals, or would you like us in your corner? I mean, now that you've got us, up against the wall here, how would you like us to pick as we get ready to pick for nationals?
Yeah, it was funny. I didn't see your episode until after regionals, and I was laughing pretty hard because I believe the quote was "not happening." Sorry, Lawless, not happening. And so when I first heard that you guys, yeah. And when I first heard that you guys wanted to talk to us, I jokingly said to my teammates, "Just tell them it's not happening." Sorry, Charlie, not happening. But no, I think Lawless definitely has, I wouldn't say a chip on our shoulder, but we definitely want to prove ourselves. Like I said, we've known for a long time that we have a lot of talent here. And so, yes, if you bet against us, we will definitely have a little fire in our belly. But I mean, if you're putting money on it, I'd put some on us.
All right. Well, that's talking my language right there. Putting money on yourself. I love it. All right. Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for stopping by, and excited to see you in San Diego. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been nice talking to you, and we'll see you there.
All right. Lindsey Doyle, captain of Arizona Lawless. They'll be in San Diego for the national championships in 2 weeks from today. Wow. 2 weeks from today. Amazing. So thanks, Lindsey.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Deep Look. Great to chat with Lindsey about Lawless, and really, it's an interesting story, Keith. I'm always excited to see how a team like this is going to fare at nationals, because I think there have been plenty of cities and states and programs who say, you know what, here's what we should do. We should merge our top men's and our top women's programs into a mixed team and try to go and win a national championship. And we've seen it many times. Sometimes it works out pretty well. Other times it goes horribly wrong. And so far for Lawless, so far so good.
Sir, it's certainly the early results are great. And I'm with you that usually I think this is the type of thing that, it takes time to simmer, to develop the flavor, so to speak. And they're way ahead of schedule. So I really am not sure. I have to sit down with the pools once we get them and try and figure out how good I think this team could be, because I'm really just not sure. All my instincts say that this is not the type of team that we usually see be successful, but they keep bucking the trend.
Yeah, but I mean, Nationals is a different beast. We know that. And I do think, matchups are going to be extremely important this year. That's one thing that I think, given the way that results have played out this season, with teams beating some teams and losing to others, and it being kind of a mishmash and not having a super clear delineation of talent, particularly in the mixed and men's divisions, I think it's going to make for a very interesting seeding. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? We don't have the official seeding out yet. There are no rankings. And so it's going to be a lot more about head-to-head, historical performance, gut feelings, it feels like. And I did my seeding predictions, Keith. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at them. I'm curious for your general thoughts on the seeding this year and how it's going to go. Did you think I was way out of line? Do you think my seeding kind of made sense? I've never had such a hard time. It took me hours to come up with seeding that I thought made sense.
I think that you were in a tough position. Usually this is a fairly standard exercise because USA Ultimate has been very predictable in the way that they evaluate teams. And now that system has changed, we don't really know how they're going to do this. They don't quite have the same tools that they've had before. So it's like, do you just continue with what they usually would do in 2019? I think that's mostly the way that you went towards. I think that you're right that we have less connectivity. We have less data on teams than usual. Usually we have more games, more results, not only just crossover results, but just results in general. More data points to feed in. And we just are lacking on those. We don't have rankings to kind of fall back on, which is, to me, the backbone of how USAU does seeding. I mean, they are happy to go to the passionless, inhuman algorithm where nobody can say that there is bias. I think that's always been a big motivator for them, is they don't want anybody to say, oh, this is unfair because you misperceive X and Y about our team. All they can say is, hey, it's just the math. Look at the math. It's not there this year. So someone's going to have to make actual decisions about who goes where. And I think that's going to be really, we don't know how USA Ultimate's going to approach that.
So here's my top seeds that I think you're going to see in each division. Sockeye, Fury, and Shame. You buy those?
Yes. I think those are some of the easier parts.
I mean, I think Shame, I don't feel like is a total lock.
Yeah, they're the least confident of the number one seeds, but I do think the logic makes a lot of sense there.
I mean, I think Sockey's for sure a lock. Sockey's for sure a lock. Fury is probably a lock. I think it could have been a question about Fury versus Brute, but Brute losing to Molly, to me, makes it pretty easy to pick Fury given the way that they played this abridged season. And really, the top couple of seeds feel like decently sensible. I mean, things are super weird and mixed because you have a very clear top six, very clear. And it's these six teams, and this is the order that I have them in, but it doesn't mean that's going to be the official order. Shame, Dragon Thrust, BFG, Mixtape, Amp, Space Heater. The problem is the two top teams, Mixtape and Space Heater, both lost at regionals to BFG and Amp, respectively. And I think that they're almost certainly going to respect those results in the seeding. And in fact, I think I didn't pick a single team ahead of another team that they lost to at regionals in my seeding. And that's not always how it works. There's a case to be made for Revolver being seeded ahead of Condors because of the way they played during the season. But I think in this year, with rosters being in flux, you really have to rely on those regionals results to bind if you want to have true fair seeding. Condors, you have to give them a better seed than Revolver, in my opinion, this year. Because it's a weird season, and you finally see the teams face off for real when it counts at regionals, and Condors was clearly the better team. So that's challenging. Where do you put BFG? They beat Mixtape, but they also have some losses on their resume. What do you do with AMP? They lost to Sprocket. They had some weird results, but then they beat Space Heater. So what do you do with them? I don't know. It's really challenging. And I've got Hybrid at 7. It's like a big drop off. But what do you do? What do you do with Hybrid? Like you could argue they should be seated way lower. First time Nationals qualifier. They only have one win against a Nationals team, 14-10 over Shine. That's their only game against a Nationals team. But they also, came out of a really strong region. So there's just so many of those kinds of decisions this year that feel very subjective. There's not really anything to rely on to make those choices besides your own gut feeling about teams. I really tried to be as objective as possible without putting my own opinion about the quality of a team into the seeding decision. I think if you do that and you start to say like, well, I feel that this team is better than that team, you can make very different choices, but that typically is not what we see from USAU.
I wholeheartedly agree on that point. Like, I think that they very much shy away from any evaluation of teams' talent based on their rosters or anything like that, because that's where they get into the spaces of perceiving bias. And one of the only places that you mentioned that in your write-up is with Pony at the 8th spot in the men's division. And I took issue with that. I was like, all right, I don't think USAU is going to lean it at like, oh, well, Pony's talent's really good and they were missing some players. I think they avoid putting that kind of stuff in at all costs. But it's hard for me to see where else you put them. I mean, so I kind of feel like, even though I don't quite agree with that reasoning, they might end up in this same spot. The men's division, I think, is the one where I probably might tweak some stuff. I think we're going to see Revolver and Condor's pair move a bit higher. I think they might get above Bravo, and they may get above Pony. That's the one thing I think that can move Pony. And I think if you float that pair, you also get to float potentially Truck Stop and Rhino. Truck against Sub, the head-to-head loss is almost always the tiebreaker, but I feel like I can see Sub getting punished for the Madmen loss. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like usually they reward teams for upsets, but Madmen's obviously not in the field to be up. I don't know what they're going to do in that section with the Truck Sub-Zero. It doesn't taste right to like put Truck Stop in front of Sub-Zero because of the head-to-head loss. But I feel like Truck Stop and Rhino are probably tied together. If they move up, Sub-Zero is probably moving behind Rhino. And the same thing about Condors and Revolver. I think Condors and Revolver are going to get higher. I think that the Revolver brand is going to carry a lot of value here.
Okay, so hang on a second. I just want to double check. Did Sub-Zero lose to Truck and I just like did not see that?
No, Sub has the head-to-head win over Truck, I'm pretty sure.
Sub has a head-to-head win. Right. Okay, so that's what I thought. So that's what I'm saying.
It's hard to move Truck ahead of Sub when Sub has a head-to-head win.
Exactly. But it feels in your brain, you think Sub-Zero 5 seed makes no sense. At least that's what goes on in my brain. But
they should be the negative 5
I have
seed.
I have to recognize that I am thinking about Sub-Zero from the sense of what I knew about them from the past. And when you actually look at their wins and losses, their results look really good. I mean, take away the Mad Men sectionals loss, which clearly didn't mean anything because they then dominated that team at regionals when they had their full roster. I just think you should not overweight sectionals results. It just should not happen, especially for a team like this. They beat Chain, they beat Truck, they beat Pony. They lost to Chain, and the thing that makes it tricky, I mean, I don't actually know that anything makes it tricky. They lost to Sake, they lost to Chain, both teams that I have seated ahead of them, and they beat Truck, Pony, and Chain. That Chain win looks really good. And the Truck win floats them. I honestly, I don't know how you put them somewhere else unless you're just deciding that Truck should be way lower, but I don't know how you do that. And like there's all this circular logic because a bunch of the teams have wins and losses over each other like a snake eating itself.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Because seriously, after the top three, Sockeye, Machine, Ring, tell me the next three seeds.
I mean, they
If you don't think it's Chain, Sub, Truck, I would love to hear who you think it should be.
I think I kind of made my case. I think it's either I think the Chain thing looks weird, but I get it. Like the logic makes sense to me. So I do think they're going to get the 4. And it's kind of like do you put? I'm not sure what to do with the trio of Sub, Truck, and Rhino, because I think if you move Truck and Rhino up, you're going to move them ahead of Sub. For some reason, I don't feel like Sub's going to split Truck and Rhino. So either they're going to be ahead of them at the 5 as you have them, or I think they could be at the 7. It's can we get the World Cup style draw? The people want it. We all know it's the best. This is the year.
I 100% agree. I think you seed the top 4. You make tiers of 4 teams,
yep.
And then you randomize within the tiers.
Agreed.
Right. I don't think you should go full random, because I think there's enough data to feel like you can kind of like make groupings of 4. And it's not gonna be perfect, but like it's gonna be better than nothing. And then you randomize within those tiers, and then you have your pools.
I could also see doing top 4, and
and then random the rest.
No, top 4 and bottom 4, and then random in the middle.
I would actually be fine with that, because the middle is where it's really murky this year.
Usually the bottom is pretty clear. You have some teams that have very little national results.
The bottom was quite easy, right? I think.
So I think you can lock the bottom 4, and you can lock the top 4, and then do some sort of randomization in the middle. But maybe that's not substantively different than doing tiers of 4.
Well, anyway, just quickly, my top 4 seeds in each division. I just gave you men's. It's Sockeye, Machine, Ring, Chain. In mixed, it's Shame, Dragon Thrust, BFG, Mixtape. Although I think there's a case for Amp and Space Heater there, but hard to say. And in women's, I have Fury, Molly Brown, Brute Squad, Phoenix. Actually, I think those ones are pretty much a lock. So there you go. Those are my predicted seedings. We will see what happens. Hopefully by the time we record the show next week, we have our seedings, we have our schedule, and we're ready to start talking about nationals, and really looking forward to it. So that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week.